So I'm gonna try to not waste your time today and be as brief as possible and just walk you through the capabilities of the tool. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do it from both sides. So I don't really know the audience. So if it's Salesforce admins or regular users, so I'm going to show both sides of it because the plugin is actually designed to be used by Salesforce admins to create the templates that can be then reused by anybody in your Salesforce org, whether it's a sales rep or a marketing person. They don't have to know anything about Salesforce and the connection to use Excel to mass update data, mass create data in Salesforce from Excel once the admin sets up the corresponding template.
Yeah, so we have in the audience, so it would be good to cover both sides, the setup side, the admin side, and also the end user side, because not many of these users will have limited capabilities and they should be able to do only certain things that are allowed for them. And then some people would be the administrators as well.
Yep, that's what I thought. So I'll start with the admin. I'll create a very simple template. So again, every Salesforce org is different. You probably have a lot of custom objects, custom fields there, but I'll stick to standard opportunity and account objects and just show you a very simple example of pulling opportunities based on an account, updating some data and pushing it back, and then preparing the template to be reused by everybody, like all regular users in your Salesforce org. So as you can see, and before I start, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me, ask. A timely question is always good. Right? So, and this is the plugin. And one side note, we have two types of plugins, so don't get confused. I'll show you this one. This is the simplest. It supports all kinds of platforms. It works in Excel Online, Excel for Mac, Excel for Windows. We also have a more complicated one that works on Windows only. Just for your information that it exists, it has the deeper capabilities of running VBA scripts, and you can do really, really complex things there, but we're not going to cover it today. So I'll just stick to this. And this plugin can be installed from the Microsoft Store. It shows up in your ribbon. These buttons, the way the Microsoft plugins are done right now, the buttons don't really mean anything. As soon as you click on it, it opens the plugin in the sidebar. So that's where all the action happens. Now, you have to log into Salesforce, obviously, before using the plugin, and it respects all the profile and role combinations, all the access rights of the user who's logged in. So there's no need to worry about users accidentally creating or deleting stuff that they're not allowed to. So I'm logged in. That was quick. Yeah, I was already logged in. That's why I didn't have to specify the password. But essentially, it's your regular Salesforce login. If you have SSO enabled, it will take you through the SSO, but nothing special here. You just log into Salesforce. So what I'm going to do right now, as you can see, I already have a list of accounts pulled here. So right now, I will pull some opportunities into a separate sheet, and I'll use a SQL query for that. That's more for admins. They can use any SQL query here, and I'll show you the dynamic part of the query that you can use. So I'll select the opportunity object, and it's going to be a very simple query. So it will pull opportunity IDs, account IDs, opportunity names, stage names, amount, close date, and that's about it. So I'll do that. I'll make sure under options, I'll make sure there's a data table created for the data. And also I'm gonna make sure that it goes to cell A3. So you can put any data from Salesforce to anywhere in your Excel spreadsheet. You can have multiple data sources in one sheet. It's very flexible. And we'll create a new worksheet right now. So let me run this. This just pulls all the opportunities that I have in the system. And it's a dev org, so there's not a lot, about 50. I did it to just create a template for this. Now I'm going to change it a little bit. So I want my users to be able to pull specific opportunities, and I'll choose account. So I'll do it based on the accounts. We have a list of accounts here. So what I'm going to do here is say account name, and then here I will use like regular Excel data validation tool to create a nice drop down that will show us the list of all available accounts in the system. So if I do this, now in this drop down, I have all my accounts. And in this SQL query that I ran for the opportunity, I'm going to, and that's why I wanted to show this to you, is to demonstrate the dynamic capabilities of pulling data. You can basically specify dynamic values in the query that will reuse whatever values are in the sheet. It can be named ranges, it can be tables, but I'll just specifically specify the B1 cell, and that means double square braces, other square curly braces mean that it will take this value from the B1 cell. We even have a preview where we can run this and see. Right now the cell is empty. Now it's empty. I can select something here and calculate it, and just to double check that the query runs correctly. So that's it. Let me see something. Okay, yeah. So the query, as you, I noticed that the run button is disabled. That means that the query is not really correct, and that's right. So I forgot to specify the filter. So what I wanted to do is to do where account.name equals this. So we'll basically pull all up opportunities for every account selected in this dropdown. And now this button is on. See, yeah, it's just, I can just save this. So that's the data source that I saved. So for the user, now we have a one-way communication. So we're pulling data from Salesforce based on the account. So let me just select an account, and I can refresh data now. Now you can refresh, there's a lot of options here. You can refresh all data sources in the entire spreadsheet. In every tab, you can refresh all data sources in this specific active tab, or you can choose a data source. Right now, we only have one, but the possibility is to have multiple. That's why all these buttons. So I'm going to refresh this. And now you'll see that it only pulls data for the gene point account. It has two opportunities. And like if I choose something else and hit refresh, it will now pull a different account, which may or may not have data. So see, this one doesn't have anything. Let's see if there's anything in a different account. But it works. So you can see it pulls the specific opportunities for the account. Now my goal here is to provide the user with a template to pull opportunities for a specific account and be able to update stage names, amounts, and close dates on these opportunities, push them back to Salesforce, and if necessary, create new opportunities as well. If there is a new opportunity that has to be added to this account, the user should be able to just type in the necessary data here below the data and also push that in. So for that, I will create, and I'll go to push data. That will be an upsert operation. So we'll be upserting opportunities. Upsert operation in Salesforce creates new records or updates existing records based on an external ID field. And we're just going to use the opportunity ID, so the standard ID field as external ID. So I'll click on that, and this also creates a template, so all the mappings are saved as a template in the sheet and can be reused later. So in this case, I will call it upsert, or you don't have to call it. It's by default, there's a default name. I just wanted to specify my own. Now the object was pulled from the query that I ran. I have to specify the mapping. So that's the admin part that admin has to set up. Normally, you don't want your users to mess with mappings, because if the user does not necessarily understand the relationship between a field and the column, and it maps the column to the wrong field, the tool doesn't know better. It will push data to the column, to the field that you specify. If it's wrong, it's wrong. I mean, if the type is incorrect, you'll get an error, but chances are it may be two text fields that you mess up. So that's why we hide this. This is for admins only. And once set up, you can hide the this whole thing, and the mappings will not be shown to the regular users. So the way mappings work is this ID will need to be mapped, and this checkboxes identify which fields will be basically taken for consideration when doing the upsert. We use the ID as the external ID field, and then everything else looks correct. So account IDs, names, that's all there. So we have the mapping set up. And one last thing to set up is some options. So you can define for the end user, you can define if all records will be taken, all rows basically from this table will be taken and uploaded to Salesforce, or whether it's new rows only. Whether it's new or not is defined by the results. So we're not going to go into this one. This is a little bit more complicated, but there is also selected. So I usually choose between selected and all. Selected, if you choose selected and save this template, then you have to instruct your users to select a row before pushing it. So if it's not always all rows, it's a very common scenario when a user just types in values for a couple of rows and they don't want to change the rest of them. You would do selected basically. So you choose the selected node, and then based on the selection, it will push the data back to Salesforce and not touch anything that's not selected. Just a side note, there's also filtering in Excel. So that comes very handy when you work with a lot of data. And it works very well. So if you want to filter the data, so let's say if you wanted to only push back opportunities from this account that have this test, test stage name, we can do this. We can filter it and then specify a different one here and push it. So back to the settings of the template. I'm going to select all right now. This means it will use all rows that are available in this specific table that we're working on. And yeah, I think that's it. We can save this now. I'll just save it and I'll show you. I'll go back. It's saved as a flow step. We call it flow step because you can have multiple steps in the same flow, and one flow is usually for one tab. So it is a more complicated scenario I'm not going to go into right now, but it is possible to run multiple things. You can create a bunch of accounts from the same tab and then run and then create another set of opportunities for these accounts and more, so you can do related objects. And that brings me to one setting that I forgot to specify actually. So there's a way to bring back IDs from any operation. So if you do insert, this is especially useful when you do insert, because the records that you're inserting and that's creating new records in Salesforce, they don't exist yet in Salesforce. But when they get created, the ID gets returned to Excel connector, and you have the option to populate any column of your data with the newly returned ID. So I'm going to use the ID. That's one. This is the first. That's the ID, and this will work for opportunities that will create, like new opportunities, not the ones that are updating, because ID already exists there. So let me save this. Basically, this is all that the admin has to do in terms of creating a template. This is already a template. It has under pool data, it has the data source. We call it a data source, and that's a connection to Salesforce. That's how the user, when they come in here, they refresh data and this query is run. And it also has a flow step, and that's the other way around. I chose upsert. You can have insert, update, upsert flow steps. You can have multiple. In this case, it will run the upsert on all rows in this data set. And to show you now I'm going to switch over from the Enterprise Admin Edition, and when I'll trial, so we do have a 30-day trial when you sign up. So, and when on trial, you have an option to switch between all the different editions. That's why I can easily go back. Hey, and
Alex, quick question.
Please go ahead, Kenji.
When you're making the template, if you wanted to restrict which columns were actually going to affect a change when the user executed with your template, you wanted to show them some, and only would you just map the ones that you wanted to allow them to edit using the template?
Great question, Kenji. Actually, these checkboxes, that's exactly what they're for.
Okay, so if I left something unmapped for the purpose of the template, even if it was a field they had user access rights to edit, using this template, it would only overwrite the things that were mapped.
It will just ignore whatever's in that column. And that's actually, that's a good example. We don't need to change the opportunity names, so I'll uncheck that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then if they did happen to do something in Excel, when they retrieved it, they would see that change never made it through, and only the assignee or the account or whatever stage, whatever they
Yep, that's correct. So yeah, so now I'm going to go back to the license and switch to team player. This is the license that is usually the people get it for sales reps or again marketing people. And in this mode, the pool data tab is all here. So this is read only. You cannot do any damage. So we allow users to pull data, queries, reports. In most cases, they don't use queries because they don't know SQL. But reports is very handy. You can run any report here and put it into any sheet, refresh it later, hook up your pivot table, get several reports and hook up your pivot table to them. So it's very handy. You can do your charts, dashboards, and then refresh them all in one click and get your charts and dashboard refresh. But I'm digressing. So so that's what is available for the team player. And then under push data, we hide all the insert, delete, all these buttons that can actually do damage. We only show you the flow steps. So those can be run. And again, you have an option to run all flow steps on one tab, all flow steps on every single tab in this document, or just a single flow step here, which we only have. So from the user's perspective, using this template is very simple. This is Excel 365, so you can even save the document on OneDrive or SharePoint. And it's just going to sit there. The user logs in, opens the document. Rather than the other way around, they open the document, log into Salesforce, and it's ready to use. So let's say we want to go to Gene Point account. So I'll go to pool data, refresh, and now we have, so it respects the filters. So we'll need to enable that. So there's two Gene Point accounts. So let's say I want to change the amounts here. The actual opportunities got one, and one is 80,000, the other is 90,000, and I want to change that to closed one, and I want to change the date to whatever today's date is, 11/04/2020, historical date. Oops. So two dates here. And then I also want to add another opportunity here. So I'm going to copy this account ID because we need to link the opportunity to the new account ID. Oh, you know what? Okay, give me 1 second. I'll go back to admin. And because I did this little change, I made this change with the account name, we won't be able to create any new accounts because the opportunity name is a mandatory field. So I'm going to go back and enable that. We'll need all columns. Sorry about that. Switching back to team player. All right, and then I'm back to work as a sales rep. I'll say Gene Point something like that. It's also closed lost. Just some random amount here, same date here. That's it. So I'm done working on my data. All I have to do here is just click the Run Flow button. It worked. Actually, that's a good example. We have an error, but which I did not expect, but it's good. There's a so there's a few. I'll revisit the mappings in a second. I'm not sure what happened there. But that's actually a good example. When there are any errors, the results that come back, they're always placed on the right from the data, one column over. This way, I only have 3 rows, but sometimes you have a lot more and you want to know what exactly happened for each row. You can filter on results and then update your data, fix your data, and re-upload. So it's very flexible. If any of you worked with data loader, you know that working with CSV files is a lot more complicated. You have to save them, you have to map them, and then go back and see results. So here, everything is in one place. You see the results. And now that's a very good example that we can try to go back and fix. It says required fields are missing. So I'm going to go switch back to the enterprise admin and check what we didn't save. I guess I didn't save the mappings. Yeah, so name needs to be mapped, apply, and save. See, yeah, it's there. Not sure why I didn't save last time. I probably forgot to click on something. And back to team player, push data. Let's run it again. There you go. And you can also see that when with the upsert result, it will specify whether the record was created or updated. And in this case, this last record that I added got created. I can go to pull data source, repull this, just rerun this query to make sure the opportunities are all there. See that order changed, but all three are in place. The amounts, the dates, everything is correct. And you can also see that the IDs are here. So if I were to run this again, if I say, notice, oh my God, I forgot a zero here. That was 10,000 in fact. Well, I can go back, change that, and rerun the flow step. And now it got updated. So again, I can actually, let me show you something else. If you have an ID, an opportunity ID in the data, you can always select it and go click on open in Salesforce, which will open, this is my second screen, open the browser in Salesforce with that specific record already in the view, and you can verify this is my amount that I specified, the close lost, and that the name is correct, the account is Gene Point, so everything looks correct to me.